Preston Walsh boarded Flight 108, feeling untouchable. He looked at the black woman sitting in first-class seat 1A, assumed she was the cleaning crew, and sneered as he demanded she move to economy. He thought his platinum status and expensive suit gave him the right to displace anyone he chose. He was wrong. The woman Jordan Taylor wasn't just a passenger. She was the CEO of the logistics empire he was flying to London to impress. What started as a simple seat dispute quickly spiraled into a grounded 777, a viral firestorm, and the absolute destruction of a corporate tycoon. Watch closely, because karma didn't just knock on Preston's door, it kicked it down. The rain at JFK International Airport was relentless, hammering against the floor-to-ceiling glass of Terminal 4 like thousands of tiny, angry fists. It was the kind of weather that grounded lesser flights and put everyone on edge, but for Jordan Taylor, it was just background noise. Jordan adjusted the collar of her beige trench coat, shaking off a few stray droplets as she navigated the crowded concourse. She didn't look like the heavy hitters usually found in the Delta Sky Club. She wore no flashy jewelry, her hair was pulled back in a simple practical bun, and her shoes were comfortable loafers rather than towering heels. To the untrained eye, she looked like a tired commuter, perhaps a mother traveling to see family, or maybe a mid-level manager exhausted by the grind. She was exhausted, but not by a mid-level grind. Jordan was the CEO of Taylor Vanguard Logistics, a company that quietly underpinned about 40% of the North American supply chain. If you bought something online in the last 5 years, Jordan's algorithms had likely decided how it got to your door. Today, she was flying to London for a summit that would decide the fate of a multi-billion-dollar merger with a European shipping giant. She just wanted to sleep. She approached Gate B3, 2, clutching her boarding pass for Flight 108 to Heathrow. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Taylor," the gate agent said, her eyes widening slightly as she scanned the ticket. The scanner let out a verified beep that seemed louder than usual. "First class seat 1A. Thank you for your loyalty. We know you have a choice in airlines." Jordan offered a tired, genuine smile. "Thanks, Brenda. Is the flight full?" "Completely booked, ma'am. But we held 1A for you specifically." Jordan nodded and walked down the jet bridge. The cool air of the tunnel felt good against her skin. She had paid full fare for this ticket, an exorbitant amount, because she needed the privacy. She needed to review the merger contracts one last time, without elbows in her ribs. She stepped onto the plane, greeted by the scent of recycled air and expensive leather. Turning left toward the first-class cabin, she let out a soft sigh of relief. She was ready for a glass of champagne, a warm blanket, and silence. But when she reached row 1, her relief evaporated. Seat 1A was occupied. Sitting there was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that specialized in arrogance. He was white, perhaps in his mid-40s, wearing a suit that cost more than most cars. He had already made himself comfortable. His jacket was tossed carelessly over the empty seat next to him. 1B, his shoes were off, and he was loudly sipping a scotch on the rocks while typing furiously on a tablet. Jordan checked her boarding pass again. 1A. Definitely her seat. She took a deep breath. She dealt with difficult men in boardrooms every day. She didn't have the energy for one on a plane. She stepped forward, clearing her throat politely. "Excuse me," Jordan said, her voice calm and measured. The man didn't look up. He continued typing, taking a jagged sip of his drink. "Excuse me," she said again, slightly louder this time. The man, Preston Walsh, finally deigned to acknowledge her existence. He didn't turn his head. He simply flicked his eyes upward, scanning her from her loafers to her trench coat. His lip curled slightly, a micro-expression of dismissal that Jordan had seen 1,000 times before. "Economy is back that way, sweetheart," Preston said, gesturing vaguely behind him with his glass. "The overhead bins up here are full. You'll have to check that bag." He went back to his tablet. Jordan felt a prickle of heat travel up her neck. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was familiar, weary disappointment. "I'm not looking for economy," Jordan said, stepping into his line of sight so he couldn't ignore her. "You are in my seat, 1A. Preston laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. He set his tablet down, looking at her with an expression of mock pity. "Look, I don't know how you got up here during pre-boarding, but you're confused. This is first class. The cleaning crew is supposed to be off the plane by now." The insult hung in the air, heavy and gross. "I'm not the cleaning crew," Jordan said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming steelier. "And I'm not confused. I have the boarding pass for 1A. You are in the wrong seat." Preston sighed, the exaggerated sigh of a man burdened by the incompetence of the world. "Listen to me very closely, because I'm only going to say this once. I am a Platinum Diamond member with this airline. I fly this route twice a month. I always sit in 1A. If there's a mistake, it's yours. Now move along before I call the flight attendant and have you escorted off for harassment." Jordan stared at him. She looked at his monogrammed cufflinks, PWW. She looked at the file open on his tablet. She caught a glimpse of the header, Stratton Oakmont Capital. Merger acquisition targets. Her eyes narrowed. Stratton Oakmont, the investment firm that was notoriously aggressive, known for stripping companies for parts. And he was reading acquisition targets. "Sir," Jordan said, her patience thinning, "I don't care if you're the CEO of the airline. That is my seat. Please move." Preston snapped his fingers, loudly. A flight attendant, a young woman named Sarah, who looked already overwhelmed by the boarding process, rushed over. "Is there a problem, Mr. Walsh?" Sarah asked, clearly recognizing him. "Yes, Sarah, there is," Preston said, pointing a finger at Jordan. "This woman is harassing me. She seems to think she's sitting here. Can you please direct her to row 45 or wherever her ticket actually is? She's blocking the aisle." Sarah turned to Jordan, her expression apologetic but firm. "Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass, please?" Jordan held it out. Sarah took it, scanned it, and then frowned. She looked at the seat number. She looked at Preston. She looked back at the boarding pass. "Mr. Walsh," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. This boarding pass is for seat 1A. It's Ms. Taylor's seat." Preston didn't budge. He swirled his scotch. "Computer glitch. I'm already settled. My suit jacket is already off. I'm not moving." "But, sir," Sarah tried, "if her ticket says 1A, then upgrade her," Preston barked, causing several other passengers to look up. "Put her in 1B or 2A, I don't care, but I am not moving my things. I have a very important meeting in London that requires me to be rested, and I prefer the window. Now fix it." Sarah looked at Jordan, pleading with her eyes. She was caught in the middle of a conflict she wasn't paid enough to solve. "Ma'am," Sarah whispered to Jordan, I can check if 1B is open. It's an aisle seat, but it's still first class." Jordan looked at Sarah. She saw the fear in the young woman's eyes. Fear of the complaint Preston would undoubtedly file. Fear of losing her job. Jordan wasn't angry at Sarah. She was angry at the entitlement sitting in seat 1A. "No," Jordan said softly. I paid for the window. I booked this seat 3 months ago. She looked back at Preston. He was smirking. He thought he had won. He thought that because he was a loud white man in a suit, the world would bend around him, and the tired woman in the trench coat would just fade away into the back of the plane. "Last chance," Jordan said to him. "You really don't want to do this." "I'm already doing it," Preston sneered. "Go sit down, honey. You're blocking the service cart." Jordan stared at him for 3 long seconds. She memorized his face. She memorized his arrogance. And then a calmness washed over her. "Okay," Jordan said. She turned around. "Thank you," Preston muttered, picking up his tablet again. Finally. Jordan didn't move to seat 1B. She didn't move to economy. She walked back to the galley, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number that very few people possessed. It wasn't customer service. Jordan stood in the galley, the curtain separating her from the first-class cabin partially drawn. The smell of coffee was strong here. Sarah, the flight attendant, watched her nervously. "Ma'am, the doors are closing in 2 minutes," Sarah said. "I really need you to take a seat. I can get you a voucher for the inconvenience." Jordan held up a hand, gently silencing her. "I'm not flying, Sarah. Not yet." The phone rang twice before it was answered. "Jordan." A deep, gravelly voice answered on the other end. "I thought you were wheels up to London. Everything okay?" "Hello, David," Jordan said. David Sterling was the senior VP of operations for the airline. They had gone to business school together at Wharton 20 years ago. More importantly, Jordan's logistics company, Taylor Vanguard, currently handled the fuel supply chain contracts for David's airline at 3 major hubs, including JFK. A contract negotiation was coming up in 2 weeks. "I'm currently on flight 108, Jordan said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Standing in the galley." "Okay. Is there a mechanical issue? Do I need to make a call?" "There is an issue," Jordan said. "But it's not mechanical. It's passenger-related. I have a squatter in my seat 1A, a Mr. Preston Walsh." "Walsh?" David paused. "The hedge fund guy." "Yeah, he's a frequent flyer. Pain in the ass from what the logs say. But the crew should handle that." "Why are you calling me?" "Because," Jordan said, glancing through the curtain at the back of Preston's head. "He refused to move. He told me to go back to where the help sits. And when the flight attendant tried to enforce the ticket, he bullied her into submission. He thinks because he's platinum, he owns the plane." "Jesus." David sighed. "I'm sorry, Jordan. Put the lead attendant on. I'll have him dragged off." "No," Jordan said. "I don't want him dragged off. That's too easy. And frankly, David, I'm disappointed. If this is how your valued customers treat people, and if your staff is too terrified to enforce the rules because of status, I'm worried about our partnership. If you can't manage a seat assignment, how can I trust you with my fuel logistics?" There was a silence on the other end. A heavy, expensive silence. David knew exactly what she was saying. She wasn't threatening him explicitly, but she was reminding him of the leverage she held. "What do you want to do, Jordan?" David asked, his voice serious now. "I want the plane grounded," she said. Sarah, who was standing close enough to hear, gasped audibly. "Grounded?" David asked. "Jordan, that's a full 777. The costs." "The pilot hasn't pushed back yet," Jordan said. "Technically, we are still at the gate. I want you to issue a security and manifest discrepancy hold. Tell the captain not to move an inch. I want the manifest rechecked manually. Every single passenger." "Jordan." "He humiliated me, David. He treated me like a servant in front of your staff, and your passengers. And he's sitting there drinking scotch like he won. If that plane takes off with him in my seat, Taylor Vanguard will look for a new shipping partner for the East Coast lanes next quarter. Okay, David said instantly. Okay, done. Stay put. I'm calling the tower and the dispatch right now. Give me 3 minutes. Jordan hung up. She slipped her phone into her pocket and looked at Sarah. You might want to call the captain, Jordan said coolly. Tell him dispatch is about to red light this flight. Sarah looked at Jordan with a mix of awe and terror. She picked up the interphone and buzzed the cockpit. Back in seat 1. Preston Walsh was feeling good. He had successfully exerted his dominance. He texted his assistant. Had a little run-in with some affirmative action hire, trying to snag my seat. Handled it. Wheels up soon. He took another sip of his scotch. He was the VP of Stratton Oakmont. He was untouchable. Suddenly, the hum of the engines which had been winding up for the pushback spooled down. The fasten seatbelt light dinged, but not for takeoff. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. It wasn't the usual confident pilot drawl. It sounded confused. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller from the flight deck. We've just received an order from operations to hold our position at the gate. We have a discrepancy with the passenger manifest that needs to be resolved before we can push back. We apologize for the delay. We ask that everyone remain seated. A groan went through the cabin. Passengers checked their watches. Preston rolled his eyes. Unbelievable, he muttered loudly. Incompetence everywhere today. He looked over his shoulder, expecting to see the woman from earlier sitting in the back, looking defeated. Instead, he saw her standing near the cockpit door, looking at her phone, looking perfectly calm. Sarah, the flight attendant, walked down the aisle. She stopped at row 1. Mr. Walsh, she said. Her voice was stronger now, bolstered by the strange turn of events. What now? Preston snapped. Are we moving? No, sir. The flight has been grounded by corporate headquarters. They are sending a gate manager and a security compliance officer on board immediately. Preston scoffed. For a paperwork error, ridiculous. I have a meeting in London in 7 hours. Get me another drink. I can't serve any more alcohol while we are grounded, sir. Sarah said, a tiny glimmer of satisfaction in her eyes. Preston slammed his hand on the armrest. This is a joke. Do you know who I am? From the galley, Jordan watched him unravel. She hadn't even started yet. The delay wasn't just to annoy him. Jordan knew something about Preston's meeting in London that he didn't know she knew. She knew who he was meeting, the Kensington Group, and she knew that the Kensington Group prided itself on punctuality and moral character. Jordan took her phone out again. She opened her email and found a contact, Sir Richard Halloway, CEO Kensington Group. She began to type a message. Dear Richard, so sorry, but it looks like I might be late to our dinner tomorrow. I'm currently stuck on the tarmac at JFK. Ironically, I'm being delayed by a man named Preston Walsh. I believe he's pitching to you tomorrow morning. He seems to be having a meltdown over a seat assignment. Quite the spectacle. She didn't hit send yet. She waited. The plane door reopened. The sound of heavy boots hit the jet bridge floor. 2 men in high-visibility vests walked onto the plane, accompanied by a woman in a sharp navy blazer, the terminal manager. They didn't look at the economy passengers. They didn't look at the flight attendants. They walked straight to the first-class cabin. The terminal manager, a woman named Mrs. Gomez, scanned the cabin. Her eyes landed on Jordan standing in the galley. Mrs. Gomez hurried over to Jordan, ignoring Preston completely. Ms. Taylor, Mrs. Gomez said, extending a hand. I'm so terribly sorry. Mr. Sterling called me directly. We are handling this immediately. Preston's head snapped around. He watched the terminal manager apologizing to the confused woman in the trench coat. "Hey," Preston shouted. "I'm the Platinum member here. Why are you talking to her?" Mrs. Gomez turned slowly to face Preston. Her face was like stone. "Mr. Walsh?" she asked. "Yes, finally. Tell this woman to find a seat so we can leave." "Mr. Walsh," Mrs. Gomez said, her voice carrying through the silent cabin. "You are currently seated in a seat that does not belong to you on an aircraft that is not going anywhere until you are removed." "Removed?" Preston laughed, but it was a nervous sound. "I'm not being removed. I'm a VIP." "Not anymore," Mrs. Gomez said. "We have revoked your status, pending an investigation into passenger intimidation. Now grab your bag." "You can't do that?" Preston stood up, his face reddening. "I'll sue this entire airline. I'll buy this airline just to fire you." Jordan stepped out from the galley. She walked slowly toward seat 1A. She stopped right in front of Preston. She wasn't intimidated by his height. She radiated power. "You're not going to buy anything, Preston," Jordan said quietly. Preston looked down at her, confused by her use of his first name. "How do you know my name?" "I know a lot of things," Jordan said. "I know you work for Stratton Oakmont. I know you're going to London to meet Richard Halloway. And I know that you're about to have a very, very bad day." Preston froze. "Who are you?" "I'm the woman whose seat you stole," Jordan said. "And I'm the reason this plane isn't moving. Now get out of my chair." The air in the cabin was electric. The other first-class passengers were staring mouths open. Preston looked around, realizing for the first time that the tide had turned. But his ego wouldn't let him fold. Not yet. "I'm not going anywhere," Preston hissed. "Call the police. I dare you." Jordan smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Okay," she said. She looked at Mrs. Gomez. "Call the Port Authority and have them bring the federal list. I want to press charges for interference with a flight crew." As Mrs. Gomez reached for her radio, Preston's phone rang. It was a loud, jarring ringtone. Preston looked at the screen. His face went pale. It was his boss, the CEO of Stratton Oakmont. "You might want to answer that," Jordan whispered. "News travels fast, at 0 miles per hour." The silence in the first-class cabin was so profound that the vibration of Preston's phone against the armrest sounded like a drill. The caller ID flashed a name that made Preston's stomach drop through the floor. Arthur Pendleton. Arthur wasn't just a boss. He was the managing partner of Stratton Oakmont, a man known on Wall Street as the Butcher for how quickly he cut loose dead weight. He was currently in the Hamptons, and he never ever called subordinates directly unless something was burning. Preston's hand trembled as he slid the answer icon. He tried to put on his best, business-casual voice, despite the fact that a terminal manager was glaring at him and a fellow passenger was essentially holding the plane hostage. "Arthur, good morning. I'm actually just on the tarmac, heading to London to close the Halloway deal." "Shut up." Arthur's voice barked loud enough that Jordan, standing 3 feet away, could hear the tinny distortion. "Preston, why am I getting a phone call from David Sterling?" Preston froze. His eyes darted to Jordan. She offered him a small, icy smile and tapped her watch. "David Sterling," Preston stammered. "The airline VP, I don't know, Arthur. There's been a bit of a mix-up with the seating chart. I'm handling it." "Handling it?" Arthur screamed. Sterling just told me that one of my senior VPs is currently squatting in a seat he didn't pay for harassing a high-value logistics partner and has effectively grounded a transatlantic flight. Do you have any idea what the PR fallout is if this gets out? We are in the middle of a quiet period. Preston, I don't need Stratton Oakmont executive arrested for air rage on the Bloomberg ticker. It's not air rage, Preston hissed, turning his back to Jordan and Mrs. Gomez, huddling into the corner of the seat he had stolen. Arthur, listen. The woman she's nobody. She's confused. She's trying to hustle a free upgrade, and she's got the staff fooled. I'm just standing my ground. I'm protecting the firm's image by not letting us get walked over. Jordan stepped closer. She didn't shout. She didn't scream. She simply leaned in toward the phone Preston was clutching. Mr. Pendleton, Jordan said, her voice projecting clearly into the microphone. This is Jordan Taylor, CEO of Taylor Vanguard Logistics. Preston jerked the phone away, trying to cover the receiver. Don't you talk to him. But it was too late. The line went dead silent for a heartbeat. Jordan Taylor. Arthur's voice came back, significantly lower, stripped of its aggression, and replaced with a sudden, terrified respect. Ms. Taylor, are you the passenger he's arguing with? Jordan leaned in again, ignoring Preston's attempt to shove her away. I am. Your vice president threw my bag into the aisle, told me to go back to where the help sits, and is currently drinking scotch in seat 1A, a seat I booked to review the contracts for our upcoming shipping integration. You know, the one worth $40 million to your firm next year. Preston looked at the phone. He looked at Jordan. The color drained from his face so fast, he looked like a wax figure. He didn't know. He genuinely didn't know. To him, she was just a black woman in a trench coat. He hadn't bothered to read the industry brief regarding who actually moved the freight his company invested in. Preston, Arthur said. The voice was eerily calm now. Are you still there? Yes, Arthur, Preston whispered. Get off the plane. But Arthur, the meeting with Halloway. You don't have a meeting with Halloway anymore. I'm sending Collins. Get off the plane, Preston. And don't bother coming into the office on Monday. HR will courier your personal effects to your apartment. You're done. The line clicked. The call ended. Preston sat there, the phone slipping from his sweaty palm and landing on his lap. He stared at the blank screen. Fired. In 30 seconds. He looked up at Jordan. The arrogance was fracturing, revealing a desperate, cornered animal beneath. You, Preston pointed a shaking finger at her. You just cost me my job. You bitch! He lunged. It wasn't a full attack, but he threw his heavy crystal glass of scotch toward her. Jordan didn't flinch. She simply took a half step back. The glass shattered against the bulkhead, spraying amber liquid and ice all over the expensive carpet and splashing onto the trousers of the man sitting in 2A. That, Mrs. Gomez said, pressing the button on her radio, is assault. Send the officers in, now. Preston stood up, his face purple. She tricked me. She set me up. This is entrapment. He looked around the cabin for support, for anyone who looked like him, anyone who might start with the businessman against the aggressor. Can you believe this? Preston shouted to the cabin at large. She knows my boss. She planned this. A man in seat 2. An elderly gentleman with white hair and a Patek Philippe watch, now wiping scotch off his leg, looked up at Preston. Son, the man said, his voice dripping with disdain. The only thing she planned was a flight to London. You're the one who decided to turn it into a suicide mission. Sit down and shut up. Preston opened his mouth to retort, but the heavy thud of boots on the gangway silenced him. 2 Port Authority police officers boarded the plane. They weren't smiling. They were soaked from the rain, irritated by the delay, and had been briefed that a hostile male was endangering the flight crew. Which one? The lead officer, a burly man with the name tag, Officer Miller, asked. Mrs. Gomez pointed a sharp finger at Preston. Mr. Walsh, Seat 1A. Intoxication interference with a flight crew, destruction of airline property, and now assault. Officer Miller walked up to the seat. Sir, grab your bag. You're coming with us. Preston looked at the handcuffs on Miller's belt. He looked at the open door. He looked at Jordan, who was calmly checking her emails on her phone, as if he didn't even exist anymore. I'm not walking off this plane, Preston said, straightening his tie, trying to summon the last shreds of his dignity. I paid $6,000 for this seat. I have rights. Sir, the second officer said, stepping into the aisle to block the exit. You can walk off, or we can drag you off. And if we drag you, it's going to hurt. Your choice. The standoff lasted only 10 seconds, but it felt like an hour. The entire first-class cabin was watching. A teenager in row 3 had his phone up, recording the whole thing. Preston saw the lens and realized this was his future. He wasn't just fired. He was about to become a meme. Fine, Preston spat. Fine, I'm leaving, but you haven't heard the last of this. I know lawyers who will eat this airline for breakfast. He reached down to grab his leather briefcase. In his anger, he jerked it too hard. The strap caught on the armrest. He pulled again violently. The bag flew open. Files, papers, chargers, and a bottle of prescription pills scattered across the aisle. Oh, for God's sake, Preston groaned, dropping to his knees to scramble for his things. Leave it, Officer Miller said, grabbing Preston by the arm. We'll have the crew bag it. You need to move. Get your hands off me, Preston shrieked, slapping the officer's hand away. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted instantly from awkward to dangerous. You do not touch a police officer at JFK. Officer Miller didn't shout. He didn't argue. He simply spun Preston around, slammed him face first into the bulkhead wall next to the galley, and wrenched his arms behind his back. Preston Walsh, you are under arrest for assaulting a police officer and federal interference with a flight crew. Miller recited the metallic click-click of handcuffs echoing through the silent plane. You're hurting me. My shoulder. I have a bad rotator cuff. Preston wailed. You should have thought of that before you stole a seat, the man in 2A muttered. As they hauled Preston up, disheveled, red-faced and handcuffed Jordan finally spoke again. She stepped forward so she was directly in his line of sight. Mr. Walsh, she said softly. Preston looked at her. His eyes filled with hate and tears. When you get to the holding cell, Jordan said, you might want to save your one phone call. Arthur isn't going to pick up. Go to hell, Preston spat. I've been there, Jordan replied, her voice cool as rain. I built a company from it. You just visited for 10 minutes and couldn't handle the heat. The officers marched him down the aisle. It was the longest walk of Preston's life. As he passed the curtain into economy, because the jet bridge angle required them to exit through the second door, the economy passengers who had been waiting for 40 minutes, wondering what was going on, stared at him. News had traveled back. The jungle drums of the airplane cabin were efficient. Everyone knew the rich guy in first class was the reason they weren't in the air. Boo! Someone from row 12 shouted. Nice bracelets, buddy! Someone else yelled. Preston Walsh, formerly a master of the universe, was dragged off Flight 108 to the sound of slow clapping from a plane full of people who hated him. When the officers disappeared into the jet bridge, Mrs. Gomez turned to Jordan. The terminal manager looked exhausted. "Ms. Taylor," Mrs. Gomez said, "I am so incredibly sorry. We are going to have the cleaning crew come on immediately to clean up the glass and the liquid. It will take about 10 minutes. We can move you to another flight if you prefer, or we can get you a voucher for—" "No," Jordan said, cutting her off gently. "I have a meeting in London. I'm taking this flight." "Of course," Mrs. Gomez nodded. "But seat 1A is, well, it's wet. And there's glass." Jordan looked at the seat. It was a mess. The leather was stained with scotch. "I don't need one," Jordan said. She turned to Sarah, the flight attendant who had tried to help earlier. "Sarah, is there a seat in economy?" "An aisle seat," Sarah blinked. "Economy, Ms. Taylor, you paid for first class. We can't put you in the back." "The seat is ruined," Jordan said. "And frankly, the air up here feels a little stale right now. I'd prefer to sit with people who know how to behave." "But we have 1 billion open now," Sarah said. "Give 1B to the gentleman in 2A who got scotch on his trousers," Jordan said, nodding at the older man. "He deserves the extra room for the trouble. I'll take whatever is open in the back." "Ms. Taylor," the man in 2A said, standing up. "You don't have to do that. I'm Charles Halloway, Richard Halloway's father." The twist hung in the air for a second. Jordan paused. She looked at the man properly for the first time. The resemblance was there. The nose, the eyes. "Richard Halloway?" Jordan asked. The man Preston was going to meet. "The very same," Charles said, a twinkle in his eye. "I'm the chairman emeritus of the Kensington Group. I was flying over to sit in on the meeting just to see if this Preston character was as arrogant as his reputation suggested. I think I've seen enough." Jordan couldn't help it. She laughed. The tension in her shoulders finally released. "Well, Charles," Jordan said, "it seems we have a lot to talk about, but I'm still taking an economy seat. I need a nap and I can't sleep next to the ghost of Preston's ego." "Then I'll join you," Charles said. "Sarah, find us 2 seats in the back. I'd like to discuss logistics with Ms. Taylor. I hear she's quite good at moving things, especially obstacles." The shuffle took 15 minutes. The cleaning crew did their best with 1A, but it remained empty, a monument to stupidity. Jordan and Charles Halloway walked back to row 14. Jordan took 14C and Charles took 14D across the aisle. The passengers around them whispered, recognizing them as the heroes of the drama. As Jordan buckled her seatbelt, her phone buzzed one last time before she put it in flight mode. It was an email notification. Subject urgent Halloway account strategy from Arthur Pendleton. Ms. Taylor. I hope this email reaches you before takeoff. I would like to formally apologize for the behavior of my former employee. Stratton Oakmont values our relationship with Taylor Vanguard above all else. I would like to discuss renewing our contract at your proposed rates. Please call me when you land. Jordan smiled. She didn't reply. She turned off her phone. The captain came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. My apologies for the delay. The security issue has been resolved. We are now number 1 for departure. Flight attendants prepare for takeoff. The engines roared to life, a deep, powerful thrum that vibrated through the floor. Jordan leaned her head back against the slightly too hard economy headrest. It felt better than the first-class leather ever would have. She closed her eyes. The plane taxied out, leaving the rain and Preston Walsh behind. But the story wasn't over. Karma had dealt the first blow. But the ripples were just beginning. Because when Jordan landed in London, she wouldn't just be signing a merger. She would be stepping into a war zone she had accidentally started. Preston Walsh was petty rich and vindictive. And he wasn't in jail for long. He made bail before the plane even hit cruising altitude. And while Jordan was in the air unable to defend herself, Preston was on the ground, calling in every favor, every dirty contact, and every tabloid journalist he knew. He was going to destroy her. Or so he thought. Jordan fell asleep dreaming of clear skies, unaware that the turbulence on the ground was about to get much, much worse. Preston Walsh stood on the curb outside the Queen's Central booking facility, the rain soaking through his ruined Italian suit. He didn't have his belt, his shoelaces, or his dignity. What he did have was a burning, white-hot rage that eclipsed any sense of shame. He had posted bail an embarrassing amount using a credit card that miraculously hadn't been frozen yet. He checked his phone. It was 3 a.m. in New York. The flight to London was currently somewhere over the Atlantic, completely dark, completely offline. Jordan Taylor was asleep. She was vulnerable. Preston hailed a cab, ignoring the driver's suspicious look at his disheveled appearance. Manhattan, Upper East Side, and drive fast. He sat in the back, the wet leather of the seat, reminding him of the first-class seat he had lost. He unlocked his phone. He had 7 hours before Jordan landed. 7 hours to rewrite history. 7 hours to make sure that when she stepped off that plane, she wasn't walking into a business meeting, but into a firing squad. He dialed a number. It rang once. "Preston," a groggy voice answered. "It's 3 in the morning. This better be good." "It's Gavin," Preston said, his voice raspy. "I need the nuclear option. Now." Gavin Stone was a crisis PR manager, but that was a polite title. In reality, Gavin was a professional mudslinger. He was the guy executives called when they got caught with the nanny, or when they needed a whistleblower to look like a lunatic. "Nuclear?" Gavin asked, waking up instantly. "Who's the target?" "Jordan Taylor, CEO of Taylor Vanguard Logistics." "The shipping queen, Preston?" "She's squeaky clean. She's practically a saint in the industry." "What do you have on her?" "I have an assault charge." Preston lied smoothly. "She attacked me on a plane. I have witnesses. She was drunk, belligerent, and she threw a glass at me. I'm the victim here, Gavin. I was targeted because I'm a white male in a position of power. It's a reverse discrimination. Hit job." Gavin was silent for a moment. He didn't care about the truth. He cared about the angle. "Okay. Unhinged CEO, a tax-respected financier. I can work with that. But if she's the CEO, she has power too. We need more than just a he said, she said." "She's offline," Preston said, a cruel smile touching his lips. "She's on a flight to London. She can't deny anything for another 6 hours. By the time she lands, I want the narrative set in stone. I want her stock dropping. I want her board of directors calling for her head. I can get an article on the Daily Mail and TMZ within the hour." Gavin said, the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. "But it'll cost you double for the rush." "Put it on my corporate card," Preston said, knowing full well he had been fired. He didn't care. He was going to burn it all down. And Gavin leak a rumor that Taylor Vanguard is under investigation for accounting fraud. Just throw it out there. Say sources close to Stratton Oakmont. It'll spook the market. That's dangerous, Preston. That's SEC violation territory. "Do it!" Preston screamed, startling the cab driver. "She took everything from me, Gavin. I want her to land in a crater." Preston hung up. He watched the city lights blur past. He wasn't done. He opened his encrypted messaging app and found a contact named Viper. Viper was a hacker he had used years ago to dig up dirt on a rival hedge fund manager. Preston. Need you to access the private email server of Taylor Vanguard. Look for anything on the Project Helios merger. Leak the sensitive pricing data to their European competitors. Do it now. Viper high risk. 50,000 Bitcoin. Preston Dunn. He leaned back, closing his eyes. By sunrise, Jordan Taylor wouldn't be the powerful CEO who grounded a plane. She would be a scandal-ridden liability. Her merger with the Kensington Group would be dead in the water. Richard Halloway, a man obsessed with reputation, wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole. Preston laughed softly in the dark cab. "Enjoy your nap, sweetheart," he whispered. "You're going to wake up in hell." Flight 108 touched down at Heathrow Airport with a gentle bump. The cabin lights flickered on, waking the weary travelers. In row 14, Jordan Taylor stretched her neck. It had been a long flight, but surprisingly comfortable. Beside her, Charles Halloway was folding his newspaper, a physical copy he had brought with him. "Good landing," Charles grunted. "Better than the turbulence we had at the gate, eh?" Jordan smiled. "Much better. Thank you for the company, Charles. It was enlightening." They had spent hours talking not just about business, but about the philosophy of leadership. Jordan had learned that Charles was technically retired, but his influence over the Kensington Group was still absolute. His son Richard ran the day-to-day. But Charles was the soul of the company. "The pleasure was mine," Charles said. "I usually fly private, but the jet is in for maintenance. I think I needed this reminder of what the real world looks like." The plane taxied to the gate. The fasten seatbelt sign turned off. The familiar chaotic rustle of passengers standing up and grabbing bags filled the cabin. Jordan reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "Time to face the music," she said. "I have a feeling my inbox is going to be full of apologies from the airline." She held down the power button. The Apple logo appeared. As soon as the phone connected to the UK network, it didn't just ping. It vibrated violently, a continuous, unwavering buzz that lasted for a solid 30 seconds. 142 missed calls, 305 new emails, 2,000 plus Twitter notifications, 50 urgent texts from her COO. Jordan frowned. This wasn't normal. This wasn't just airline apologies. She opened her text messages first. The top one was from Marcus, her chief operating officer. Marcus, COO Jordan. "Do not talk to the press when you land. Security is meeting you at the gate. It's a mess. Call me immediately. Marcus, COO stock is down 12% in pre-market. Who is Preston Walsh? Why is TMZ saying you assaulted him? Marcus, COO. They're saying we're insolvent. Jordan. What is happening?" Jordan's blood ran cold. She quickly opened Twitter. The top trending hashtag in the United States and the UK was hashtag #CrazyCEO. She clicked it. The top post was a link to a Daily Mail article, AIR Rage Black CEO. Jordan Taylor removed from flight after drunken assault on Wall Street exec. The article detailed a horrific, completely fabricated story. It claimed Jordan had demanded an upgrade, thrown a glass at Preston Walsh, and screamed racial slurs at him. It cited anonymous witnesses, but it was worse. There was a second article from a financial blog. Taylor Vanguard Logistics facing SEC probe, sources say, insolvency imminent. "Oh my God," Jordan whispered. "What is it? Charles asked, noticing her hand shaking. Jordan turned the screen toward him. Charles adjusted his glasses and read the headline. His bushy white eyebrows shot up. "Drunken assault," Charles read aloud. "Insolvent. This is pure fiction." "It's Preston," Jordan said, her voice tight. "He must have launched this the second he got off the plane. He's trying to kill the merger before I even get to the meeting." She looked at the emails. Her legal team was in panic mode. Clients were calling to cancel contracts. The damage was spreading like a virus. In the 7 hours she had been in the air, Preston Walsh had successfully painted her as a volatile, fraudulent criminal. They began to deplane. As they walked up the jet bridge, Jordan felt a wave of nausea. She wasn't afraid of business challenges, but this was character assassination. As they exited the jet bridge and entered the terminal, the flashbulbs blinded them. "Ms. Taylor! Ms. Taylor! Did you throw a whiskey glass at Mr. Walsh? Is it true your company is bankrupt? Are you resigning?" A pack of paparazzi and freelance stringers had gathered at the gate. It was chaos. Security guards were trying to hold them back, but they were shouting over each other. Jordan put her head down, clutching her bag. She felt small. She felt exactly how Preston wanted her to feel cornered. Suddenly, a heavy hand rested on her shoulder. It was warm and steady. Charles Halloway stepped in front of her. He didn't look like a tired old man anymore. He looked like the titan of industry he was. He raised his cane and pointed it at the loudest photographer. "Get that camera out of her face before I smash it," Charles boomed. His voice had the commanding timbre of a man who had stared down prime ministers. The paparazzi paused, confused. They didn't recognize him immediately. "Ms. Taylor is under my protection," Charles announced. "And if you print one more lie, you will be hearing from the Kensington Group's legal department." He turned to Jordan. "Walk with me. Head high." They pushed through the crowd, flanked by airport security. They made it to the VIP lounge, where the noise of the cameras faded behind the frosted glass doors. Jordan sank into a chair. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her heart rate. "He's winning," Jordan said, looking at her phone again. "The stock is free-falling. The board is calling an emergency meeting in an hour. They might suspend me, Charles. If they suspend me, the merger is dead." Charles walked over to the coffee machine, poured a cup, and handed it to her. "He is not winning," Charles said calmly. "He is flailing. This is the desperate thrashing of a drowning man." "It doesn't look like thrashing," Jordan said bitterly. "It looks like a well-executed hit." "Jordan," Charles said, sitting opposite her. "Do you remember the teenager in row 3, the one with the blue hoodie?" Jordan blinked. "I think so." "I saw him recording," Charles said. "While you were dealing with Preston, and while the police were dragging him off. I saw the boy filming the whole thing." "So," Jordan asked, "that video isn't online. If it was, this narrative wouldn't stick." "It isn't online yet," Charles said. "Or maybe it is, and it's just buried under Preston's paid bots." Charles pulled out his own phone, an old, battered iPhone that looked 3 generations behind. He dialed a number. "Richard," Charles said into the phone. "Yes, I'm at Heathrow. Yes, I've seen the news. It's garbage. Listen to me very carefully. I am sitting with Jordan Taylor. Yes, the crazy CEO. And she is the most composed woman I've met in a decade." Charles listened for a moment. "Richard, I want you to activate the digital team. Yes, our digital team. Find the footage. Scrape TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. Look for hashtags related to Flight 108. Find the truth, and when you find it, I want you to boost it with every pound of marketing budget we have." He hung up. "My son is a bit stiff," Charles winked at Jordan. "But he hates liars, and he has a very expensive team of nerds who can find anything." Jordan looked at him, tears pricking her eyes. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Charles said. "I watched you offer your seat to me, an old stranger, after you had been humiliated. I watched you treat the staff with respect, while that man treated them like dirt. Character is what you do when you think no one is watching. You have it. Preston does not." Just then Jordan's phone pinged. But it wasn't a text. It was a notification from Marcus again. "Marcus Jordan. Look at TikTok, right now." She opened the app. A video was skyrocketing. It had 2 million views and was climbing by the second. The caption read, "Real story entitled Karen Guy tries to steal seat from Black CEO gets owned. Hashtag Justice for Jordan. Hashtag Flight 108. Jordan clicked play. The video was shaky, but the audio was crisp. It showed everything. It showed Preston sneering. "Economy is back that way, sweetheart." It showed him throwing the glass. It showed Jordan's calm, steel-voiced response. And most importantly, it showed Preston screaming, "I'll buy this airline just to fire you," while being handcuffed. The internet, which had been tricked by Preston's bots, was now reacting with the fury of a betrayed mob. Comment 1. "Wait, that's Preston Walsh, the Stratton Oakmont guy." Comment 2. "She didn't even raise her voice. He's a psycho." Comment 3. "He framed her. Look at the timestamps." Comment 4. "My mum works for Taylor Vanguard. Jordan is the best boss ever. This guy is toast." The hashtag crazy CEO began to disappear, replaced rapidly by hashtag Preston is a liar and hashtag boycott Stratton. Jordan looked up at Charles. A slow smile spread across her face. "Found it," she said. Charles chuckled. "Excellent. Now finish your coffee. We have a merger to sign, and I believe my son Richard is going to be very interested in hearing the full story." But Preston wasn't done yet. In New York, watching the tide turn, he realized his PR blitz had failed. The nuclear option hadn't worked. He had one card left, a card he had stolen from his time at Stratton Oakmont. He knew where the bodies were buried in the logistics industry. Specifically, he knew about a dormant regulatory clause that, if triggered, could ground Taylor Vanguard's fleet for inspection for 48 hours. It wouldn't destroy her reputation, but it would destroy her timeline. If her planes didn't fly by tomorrow, the Kensington contract would expire automatically due to a reliability performance clause. Preston picked up the phone again. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. He wasn't trying to win anymore. He was just trying to make sure she lost. Preston sat in his darkened apartment, the glow of his laptop illuminating his manic expression. He had done it. He had called his contact at the Regional Freight Inspector's office, a man he had bribed years ago, and triggered Protocol 14B. It was a mandatory safety audit that grounded a logistics fleet for 48 hours upon suspicion of maintenance negligence. With Taylor Vanguard's planes grounded, the Kensington deal would contain a force majeure failure. Jordan would be in breach of contract before the ink was even wet. He dialed into the conference bridge for the Kensington meeting. He had the code from his previous invite. He wanted to hear the moment she failed. And as we finalized the terms, Richard Halloway's voice came through the speaker. We need to verify active shipping lanes. Preston unmuted himself. She doesn't have any, he shouted into the phone, his voice cracking with hysterical laughter. Check the FAA database, Richard. Her entire fleet just got red-lighted. Taylor Vanguard is dead in the water. There was a silence on the line. Then Jordan's voice cut through clear and calm. Hello, Preston. I was wondering when you'd join us. You're finished, Jordan, Preston gloated. I triggered the audit. Your planes aren't moving. You can't sign the reliability clause. It's over. Actually, a third voice spoke up. It was Charles Halloway. Mr. Walsh, you seem to be operating on outdated information. What? Preston snarled. The regional inspector did receive a call to ground the fleet, Charles continued. But he also received a call from the U.S. Secretary of Transportation about 10 minutes ago. It seems the video of your behavior on Flight 108 has reached the highest levels of government. The secretary was quite displeased to hear that a man under investigation for air rage and assault was trying to manipulate federal aviation protocols. Preston stopped breathing. The audit was cancelled. Jordan added, her voice dripping with satisfaction. My planes took off on schedule 5 minutes ago. The contract is valid. No, Preston whispered. No, that's impossible. I paid him. And that, Richard Halloway said sharply, is admission of bribery. This call is being recorded, Mr. Walsh. Suddenly, a loud, thunderous banging echoed through Preston's apartment. It came through the phone line, loud enough for everyone in the London boardroom to hear. Boom, boom, boom. FBI, open up. Preston scrambled back from his desk, knocking his chair over. No. You can't be here. Preston Walsh. We have a warrant for your arrest for corporate espionage, wire fraud and assault. Open the door. On the conference call, Jordan, Charles, and Richard listened as the door to Preston's apartment was rammed open. They heard the scuffle. They heard Preston screaming that he was a victim, that he was rich, that he would sue them all. And then they heard the distinct click of handcuffs. Again. Mr. Walsh is leaving the conference, an FBI agent's voice said into the phone before the line went dead. In the London boardroom, silence reigned for a moment. Then Charles Halloway picked up a fountain pen and slid it across the mahogany table to Jordan. I believe, Charles said with a warm smile, we have a merger to sign. Jordan took the pen. She signed her name on the dotted line, Jordan Taylor, CEO. She had gone to the airport just to catch a flight. She ended up catching a predator, saving her company, and proving that while money talks, integrity flies first class. And that is how Preston Walsh learned that you never judge a book by its cover, and you certainly don't steal a queen's seat. Jordan Taylor didn't just win. She doubled her company's value and sent a toxic tyrant to prison, all because she refused to be moved. It's a powerful reminder. Karma is always watching, and sometimes she has a boarding pass. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder to stand their ground, and subscribe so you don't miss our next story about people getting exactly what they deserve. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.